Welcome, everybody, to today's webinar, Navigating Uncertainty. It is titled, and we are pleased to welcome you. My name is Reiner Perau. I'm the Chamber's CEO, and I'm also pleased to welcome Julian Ries, who is probably one of the top 3 German-speaking experts on the topic of investment protection in Ukraine. Julian is a lawyer with IMPACTA Law, and he is very often to find at events in Germany when the topic is what it is today: protecting assets, protecting investments in Ukraine. We have quite a turnout in terms of registrations. We have 75 on the list, although 34 have joined so far. We hope that others will turn up. In terms of procedure, Julian is going to give his presentation, 15-20 minutes, I think, Julian, is what you have. Participants are welcome to post questions using the chat of Zoom, and after Julian has ended his presentation, we are also going to open the floor for your questions, and you can then raise your hand, and then we will get you into our discourse so that you can ask your question. That's it for the organizational part. Bar one thing, we want to have your feedback after the event. I'm going to repeat it as we draw to a close, but we need your feedback after we close, and you're going to get a form that we would love you to fill out. The floor is yours, Julian.
Yeah, thank you, Rainer. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome also from my side. Special welcome also to many lawyer colleagues who joined today. Investment protection, investment guarantees. I think it's a very good topic to start this series of webinars with, because it is a topic and it's a means to give investors and potential investors in Ukraine confidence in the protection of the investment, and can really encourage investors to come to the country even while the weapons are still working. A couple of words to me and to my firm. IMPACTA Law is what you formerly knew as Integritis. It's a full-service law firm. We work in all spheres of legal practice and industry in Ukraine. We belong to the 3-4 largest law firms in Ukraine with around about 100 employees. I'm myself, I'm a German qualified lawyer working in Ukraine already 20 years. I came to Kiev originally in 2006, worked for a long time in Kiev, and now working from Germany, but again, working with Ukraine and with Ukrainian investors under Ukrainian law. Before we jump into the more technical matters of the investment guarantee, I just yesterday had a quick briefing with PwC, who is administrating the investment guarantees. The investment guarantees of the German government are still a very popular instrument. So far, the German government secured more than 50 investment projects. PwC has weekly 2 to 3 inquiries, so not applications, but inquiries regarding the possibilities to cover projects. This is quite a lot. In 2025, Ukrainian guarantee or guarantees on investments in Ukraine were ranked first in the guarantee by quantity, not by volume so far, but by quantity. What was also interesting for me to learn is that in the beginning of the invasion, 2022 and 2023, most projects which were covered were projects of investors who have already been to Ukraine and who did an enlargement of their investment. In 2024 and 2025, this changed, and now there are more new investors, new greenfield projects, which are new investments and not only the enlargement of a existing investment. And also a good news, so far there have not been any damage claims. So the investments secured and guaranteed, they live more or less well, taking into account that the war risk or the risks in general, the political risks are not the only risks of doing business in Ukraine. There are a lot of more challenges, but at least there have not been any major damages to these investments. And with this, let us take a look into the more technical things. We have three main topics we will discuss today. It's the types of investments and the covered risks. It's the eligibility criteria, which projects can be covered. And I will briefly introduce you to the application process and the fees for getting the guarantee. Regarding the types of investment, first and foremost, shareholdings are important. Of course, if you purchase a company by purchasing shares in Ukraine, this acquisition can be guaranteed. Not only if you purchase the shares of an existing company, but also if you establish a new company and have a capital contribution to that company, these are also investments that can be subject to a investment guarantee. Capital contributions for branches, this is an alternative if you do not establish a new company, but prefer to open a representative office to have a permanent establishment. That's not very often, at least in our practice, but sometimes we see these structures as well. So if then the investor contributes certain means, monetary property to that permanent establishment, this can also be covered. Quasi-equity loans, these are loans which are in Germany known as Gesellschafterdarlehen. They are very borrower-friendly in terms of the time for which they are granted. Usually they are long-term loans. They have typically low interest rates, and they have typically a very friendly default provisions. So in case the borrower cannot pay on time interest or the main repayment, then there are very borrower-friendly rules how to deal with such situations. This is, at least in my practice and from what I can see, the vehicle which is most often used for the investment guarantee investments. It is also possible not only to invest money, it's also possible to contribute other property rights, real property, or intellectual property, for example. But again, we have seen so far only loans. There may be others, but that's not so often. Also, it is possible to cover income from the investment. That means the dividends expected or the interest on the quasi-equity loan. This was not always possible because, as you probably all know, in the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the NBU introduced certain restrictions on prohibitions on the payment of dividend and interest. These restrictions were lifted or partially lifted over time, these payments are in certain limits again possible, and insofar as they are possible today, they can also be taken into the cover of the investment guarantee. Which risks are covered? There is a catalog of different risks in the provisions of the guarantee. It's nationalization and expropriation. That means that someone takes away or not someone, but the state takes away the whole investment. This is a risk which I believe is today in Ukraine very, very remote, because the government is very pro-EU and very much oriented to law and order. They are improving the legal framework continuously, and it is not really realistic to assume or to believe that they would take away an investment. This could only happen, in my view, if for any reason really Russia would win, and then a Russian government or a Russian loyal government would take this away. But again, this is not really visible at the moment. Another risk is breach of state commitments. For example, if someone invests into a concession or does an investment under a concession and the concession is taken away. Again, only if it's illegally taken away. It's not if the investor is breaching the conditions and therefore the concession is taken away. That's of course not a cover of the investment guarantee, but if it's illegally taken away. Again, as with point one, I don't really see this risk at the moment. The most relevant risks why investment guarantees are taken out today is war and other armed conflicts, and this is the missile risk basically, and this is probably the most predominant risk that is today in Ukraine. Here we need to understand that the investment guarantee should not be mixed up with a property insurance, where a property insurance just insures within certain terms everything what happens and damages. The investment guarantee, and particularly regarding the risk of war and other armed conflicts, covers not any damage, but only the existential damage. So if the damage caused by war, by a missile, for example, is such that the investment itself cannot be continued and cannot survive because it's either completely destroyed or to this extent destroyed that it cannot be live on itself further, then the investment guarantee kicks in. Payment prohibitions and moratoriums. This was a point, or this was a risk which wasn't possible to guarantee for some time in Ukraine, just because there were these prohibitions and moratoriums from the NBU. As they have been lifted or partially lifted, now this can be taken out again. The impossibility of converting currency or transferring currency is something the German government currently does not guarantee or take over. So that's maybe for the future. There are a couple of eligibility criteria. That means certain criteria the investment must meet in order to be eligible to get the coverage of the investment guarantee. It should be remembered or noted that the investment guarantee is a means of the German government to foster its own economy and the cooperation with other countries. Typically, the investment guarantee covers only new capital investments. That means a investment which was made already cannot be covered retroactively. That does not work. It has to be new. And typically, the funds have to come new into the country. So funds sitting already in the country. This is in exceptions can also be covered under certain circumstances, but that's not the typical case, and it depends on a very individual review of the investment project. Also, the investment project should be worth backing. In German, we would say förderungsfähig. It has to have a positive impact on the host country and the German economy. For the host country, for example, it's expected to substitute certain imports so that certain things do not need to be imported but can be produced locally. It's expected that it's a modern, environmental friendly production technology, that it creates jobs in Ukraine and actually also in Germany. The positive effect on the German economy is always a little bit more difficult to substantiate and to explain, but my experience is that the German government at the moment is pretty generous concerning the positive impact. So if it has a very positive impact on the Ukrainian economy, that is, the question whether it is also bringing new jobs to the German economy or has other effects there, that's kind of assumed. And the last point is ESG. ESG criteria which have to be fulfilled. So the projects are reviewed under ecologic aspects, under social aspects, whether they are compatible. The projects we have seen, production projects, they usually do not have any problems with these ESG criteria, even more as the the mother companies also have to meet all these criteria. So that is usually not an issue. Coming to the application and the fees, as I mentioned in the beginning, PwC is mandated for the administration of the investment guarantee. By the way, the investment guarantee is nothing new. The investment guarantee was invented back in the 1960s somewhere, and PwC was mandated to administer this. That means PwC is preparing the whole application together with the client, together with the investor, and submits and represents the investor at the IMA, the Interministerieller Ausschuss. This is a commission where the Ministry of Economy, the Foreign Ministry, the Ministry of Finances, and the Ministry of Development and Cooperation are sitting together and deciding over the application. They are sitting every other month. And that means that investors need to bring a little bit of time with, or allow a little bit of time to have the whole application prepared, and then wait maximum 2 months until they are sitting. Actually, they are sitting today. They have today another meeting and decide over applications. So therefore, plan early. Because it really takes a bit of time, and depending on the complexity of the investment project, there will be several iterations until the application is ready to be submitted to the IMA. Last point, the fees. Usually there's a processing fee. It's 0.05% of the guarantee, but for Ukraine, this processing fee is waived to make it even easier. And the capital cover is 0.5% of the maximum guarantee amount for the investment, and the same amount for income. That means for planned dividends or for interest. This is, in a nutshell, what I wanted to tell you about the investment guarantee. I think you will receive the presentation after the after the webinar. So I was so free to add my contact details here. Should you have questions afterwards, then you're always welcome to contact me. But I will now take as many questions as I can. So the floor is yours now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Julian, for this comprehensive overview of the system. So whoever has the question, has the first question, raises his or her hand. So many. Stefan Schandera. Herr Schandera, bitte.
Ja, vielen Dank. Vielen Dank auch für die Präsentation, Herr Dr. Ries. Eine kurze Frage. Achso, soll ich es in Englisch machen oder? Ja, ich bleibe bei Englisch.
Yeah.
I got a very short question. We are a small investment company now also having an investment vehicle for the Ukraine. What's the typical sizes of these investments also with respect to overhead procedures, etc.? So giving you an example, if I would do a 50K investment, is this too small or is this already in the range where such kind of investment would be considered?
It is, there is no minimum investment. So any investment qualifies. There is only there's only minimum amount of, I think, 2,000 euros. So if the damage is less than 2,000 euros, that is supposed to be covered by the investor himself. So that means everything exceeding 2,000 can be covered. There is no, and again, there is no minimum. So even with a 50,000 euro investment, that qualifies and that can work.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Schandera, for the question, Julian for the answer. Any more questions? Not too many. Yeah. So I have a question. How does it look in terms of applications? How many are there pending? Do you know, Julian? How many have been processed? How many investment guarantees have been given to companies so far?
I don't recall how many well, how it as PwC said, a bit more than 50 have been taken out since the beginning of the invasion. Before the invasion, there were only very occasionally applications. So that started only after 2022. And since then, there have been a bit more than 50 guarantees granted. How many there are actually in under application and under work, PwC did not tell me. Looking at the first half year of 2025, I think there was a aggregated volume of about 260 or 270 million euros covered in Ukraine.
Which means that the individual projects are relatively small.
They are much smaller if you compare to China, India, and other. But regarding China, I think there was a decision not to cover investment in China anymore at all. There is, of course, still a large amount of open guarantees out, but the government decided not to cover new investment in China anymore, taking into account the general tendency or the general political intention to get more capacity back to Germany instead and not to China. So there was a change in the backing policy. But indeed, the volumes by far do not compete with the volumes we have seen in China, for example.
Okay. There are questions coming in the chat. Would you please give examples of projects that have already been guaranteed? There is some public knowledge about this.
One of the projects I can say is the project of Fixit. It was early in 2022, 2023. It was actually the first investment project which was granted after the invasion. This is a construction materials producer who was developing a second production outlet in Lviv region, and they applied and received the investment guarantee for this production line which they were building there. This is a very typical that's a very typical situation. Constructing, doing a new production line and taking out the investment guarantee for it.
So we got corrected with regard to China. China is still on the list, apparently. Then there is a question by Stefan Schandera. Again, you mentioned the quasi-equity loans with quoting the German equivalent of a Gesellschafterdarlehen. What about convertible loan agreements? When investors provide a loan with a purpose for later conversion.
That doesn't matter. I mean, that is just a special version of a loan which can later be converted into equity capital. And I wouldn't see any difficulty here to have this covered. After all, it's an investment. It just opens the repayment, or it changes the repayment possibilities for the loan. Actually, there is not so much difference to a typical loan, because also the typical loan could be contributed to charter capital and thus changed or switched into equity, even without having this regulated from the outset. So that also qualifies. It would then be covered in the beginning as a loan. Obviously, once the investor or once the creditor uses the option to convert, this is something. If then the investment guarantee should continue, I would assume that this is something that also needs to be discussed with the EMA or with PwC and the EMA, but that should not be a problem. I haven't had this in practice so far, but I don't think that this would cause a problem or a no go for the guarantee.
Mm-hmm. You see, Julian, the question by Sergei Kolisnuk.
No, actually, I do not see.
Okay, we are a trailer company that has been operating in Ukraine for over 10 years. Could we apply for this instrument to secure our operations, in particular against the risk of destruction of trailers held in stock in Kiev, which we import into Ukraine and prepare for handover to customers?
It depends on what should be guaranteed or secured here. If it's about the trailers which are already in the country and have already been delivered, then that is not possible, because there's no backdating. As I have it on the slide you currently see, it's only for new capital investment, and the funds or the property has to come newly to the country as a rule. If they are already in the country, then that is too late. And I'm not sure whether I understood the question correctly, but if it's about trailers to be delivered to Ukrainian customers, then maybe another insurance, and maybe a typical then a transport insurance or something similar could be used. Then it may not be really the case for the investment guarantee. Mm-hmm. But for example, if you if you have your own vehicles in Ukraine and doing transport services in Ukraine, and now you want to renew your fleet or to bring new vehicles to Ukraine as an investment to work with them there, that could be an investment that could be covered.
Julian, you will also be there on 19 March in Kiev for our next event.
Yes, I will.
Yeah. So everyone here who would like to have a chat with Julian is welcome to attend our members forum then on 19 March. Stefan Chandera asked how complex all of this is.
It is not complex. Actually, if you go to the website of PwC, or if you go to the website of the Investitionsgarantie.de, then the process is very nicely. There's a nice description of the process. There's a lot of information you can find there. There's also the application form that has to be filled in. PwC is very supportive to help investors in getting the guarantee. They are not a gatekeeper. They are more an enabler of the investment guarantee. They're really helpful. We as lawyers, we come sometimes into the game when it's not the typical situation with a new investment. If there is a new investment with a shareholder loan, for example, then it may not be really necessary to have a lawyer on board. But if you have more complex structures where you have the dividend to be used as an investment, or where there are old loans which shall be a component of the investment, then in these cases, it may be helpful to have lawyers on board who have done this already, who understand the structure and how this all works. Then it gets a bit more difficult. But in the typical case, in the usual case, it's not so complex. And you are steered by PwC through the process. It is someone has to own the project. Someone has to really put the things together, has to make the business case, write it down, put the documents together, make it visible. That's work, but it's like preparing for other investors. It's necessary to show what you have, that it's economically sound, that it helps, that it's useful for the country and also for your own country, company in Germany. That's important, but that's not rocket science.
Yeah, we have also had good feedback about PwC's approach to this. PwC is obviously very keen on helping companies in this regard. An interesting question here. I would like to paraphrase it into how German do you have to be eligible? Is a rep office enough? Do you have to have substantial operations in Germany to be eligible?
Indeed, you have to be basically you have to be German. That does not mean that all your ultimate beneficial owners come from Germany. But there has to be a substantial German business, to put it mildly. Just having a mailbox in Germany somewhere, that does not work. So if it is a large international group, and they have and this group has substantial investment and employees and production, whatever, in Germany, and the new project in Ukraine is steered from Germany, then this can be eligible. But it's not only for the German Mittelstand or the German blue chips. It can be others. They can belong to other groups as well. But there has to be substantial German business. A mailbox is not enough.
Mhm. Okay.
Or a representative office. Just a representative office does not qualify.
Jon Sheremet, he has a question that he wants.
Jon Sheremet, Chamber of Commerce in Düsseldorf. Can you hear me?
Yes.
My question is, how is the program of PwC connected to Ukraine Connect of DEG? How are they related to each other, and what is the difference? Can you provide some info?
They are not really connected to each other. They relate to each other and they complement each other. The DEG projects like Ukraine Connect, this is a financing tool under subsidized, under favorable financing terms within certain limits, etc. And such an investment can then be guaranteed with the investment guarantee. So this complements each other, but they do not depend on each other. The DEG Ukraine Connect financing, for example, can also be obtained without the investment guarantee, but of course it makes sense to combine both things because then certain risks are covered at a reasonably low cost.
And I think it is, I think it is a common approach, and I think we've seen this before also in the case of Fixit, which is public knowledge, I believe, and therefore we can say it.
Exactly.
Yep. There is a question about the necessity of a business plan. Do you need to provide a business plan with such an application?
Yeah. And to say more, it's of course, a business plan has to be there. There has to be something. There has to be. This is part of the application process to show the business plan for the project. Obviously, it's not just. It's not. Otherwise, the German government would guarantee something that where they do not even know what the client is doing with it. It's a means of fostering German economy, and of course the EMA wants to see what exactly is planned. Does it make sense? Is it something what we find relevant and eligible for this support? After all, the German government takes over certain risks. After all, this is money of the taxpayer. So they also have a responsibility to make sure that this really has a certain impact and is used only in a responsible way.
How long is the guarantee valid once it is given?
The typical guarantee or the typical term is as long as the investment runs. Usually not more than 15 years, but can be 20 years. And as far as I know, it can also be prolonged. But the typical term is 15 years.
Usually there was
but can be shorter. I mean, that depends on the investment project. If and also it can be terminated. And the fee the investor has to pay comes every year. So it's an annual fee of the 0.5%. And if in the meantime, within a year, the investment was decreased because there have been payments back, for example, then the cover can be reduced and respectively the fee can be reduced.
I was more thinking of when do you have to start your project once the guarantee is given? Can I get the guarantee now and start my project in 28?
I don't recall that there is a provision in the regulation on the investment guarantee. But again, if the business case foresees to start with the plan in 28, then I believe, I mean, there can be so many changes in between. I do not think that that they would take out the guarantee as of today.
Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how many of those 50 plus projects that are obviously have been granted. How many do you know, Julian?
Difficult. I was also, when I heard about the 50 projects, I was also wondering where are they actually. But indeed, we are not the only lawyers in Kiev, so they may be with other lawyers as well, or they go without lawyers. So, and not everybody is making it that public as Fixit, for example, did it. And some of the projects may still be in the making. So it's difficult to say. I don't know many of these 50, to be honest.
Yeah, we don't either. So those that go with other lawyers there or without lawyers, they also go without a chamber.
That's even worse.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have the impression that that there are projects which are actually supposed to become operational once the war is finished.
Okay.
That's my theory about it. But yeah, well, there is something I don't know if you mentioned this. What the results of this interministerielle Ausschuss are obviously not for the public. This is for companies themselves to disclose that they have received an investment guarantee. So, and if the companies themselves don't disclose it, we will not know.
Yeah, exactly. What we have seen only in the past is that PwC and the EMA and also the involved ministries, that they said we need to promote this. So please let us showcase your investment case, and so thus Fixit was showcased, and this is something what we've seen. But indeed, after all, it's the insured, the investor's choice whether they want this publicity or not. I mean, this is also something what we have encountered in some cases, that investors do not really want to be showcased because they prefer to stay somewhere unknown, because they do not want to draw unnecessary attention from the side of Russia, for example. So they prefer to stay under the radar and not to become too popular.
Yeah. Well, one thing is Russia, the other thing is obviously competitors.
Yeah.
So that's at least two reasons why companies do not disclose.
Yeah. Maybe one more thing about staying under the radar. What is also important is that the German government also takes into account where the investment project is planned. So if this is Kiev or in the western part, that is much easier compared to, I would say, Kharkiv or Kherson or other very close to the frontier places. Also, Odessa might be might be much more difficult. So it's not enough just to be in Ukraine. They still look at the risk in the particular location.
Okay. Do we have more questions by our 45 participants now? Give us another 30 seconds. But obviously you have covered the topic well, Julian.
Good.
Obviously, well, most people know you anyway and have your
They do.
phone number. And then we will meet you again in Kiev on 19 March.
Great.
And
looking forward to it.
whoever has questions on the topic is welcome to talk to Julian. Another possibility is Natalia Grishenko, who is the team lead of our Rebuild Ukraine team. And that team also deals with such issues as financing and investment guarantees. Well, we leave it at that then. Thank you very much, Julian, for the initiative. And
you're welcome. Thank you for organizing, having me.
Giving us the time and your expertise. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As said earlier, we, of course, always want your feedback. So once we close this, there will be a questionnaire where you can rate this, in which you can rate this event, and also, for example, come with suggestions about what topics we should cover in such online events. Thanks a lot to everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day too. Take care.
Have a good day.